She is the most beautiful noble lady in town, but she unfortunately loves to eat disgusting monster meat, which is nasty according to the townspeople, until she meets the most handsome man with ultra mega riz who wants to try her monster meat dishes. A traveling tradesman notices a noble lady sitting alone on a bench enjoying a particularly appetizing sandwich. Curious, he approaches and asks if he can try some. The lady gladly agrees, always happy to share her meals, and retrieves his sandwich from her picnic basket for him. When he tastes it, he's delighted by its flavor and asks for the recipe. Only then does she reveal it contains blackhorn wolf meat. Shocked, the tradesman awkwardly excuses himself and vomits nearby, having never expected a monster meat sandwich. Blackhorns are notorious for their poisonous flesh, so he assumes the lady must be insane to eat it so casually. Yet she is careful and knowledgeable, having processed the meat to make it safe, though few are open-minded enough to appreciate her cooking. Days later, Melfiora attends a banquet, indulging in the wide variety of perfectly presented meats, struggling to decide what to try next. Before she can wander, Mrs. Talbot reminds her she isn't there for the food. The autumn banquet is a political gathering for nobles. Essentially, Melfiora is there to secure a marriage, not enjoy the feast. She resents attending but has no choice. Her stepmother threatened to send her to a monastery if she isn't engaged by year's end. Her father hadn't been overly pushy, but he had urged her to find someone soon, which is why she agreed to attend the event. Things, however, weren't going well, as every noble recognized her as the monster meat muncher and avoided her. Hoping for better luck, she moved toward the section where most of the knights had gathered, planning to find one who hadn't heard the rumors and convince him to marry her before he discovered her little hobby. Before she could speak to anyone, a sudden commotion erupted as nobles screamed that monsters were attacking the banquet. Predictable, given the massive spread of food in the middle of the forest, yet that wasn't her concern. As nobles fled, Melfiora ran with them while knights charged to confront the threat. She then noticed an elderly couple struggling nearby. The man's walking stick had broken, leaving him unable to stand. She helped him up so they could escape, earning their gratitude, but their eyes widened in horror at the sight behind her. Turning, Melfiora froze as a massive black horn loomed just behind her. She could still flee unnoticed, but that would leave the couple in danger, so instead she shouted to draw the monster's attention and lure it away from the elderly pair. Melfiora was relieved she had saved them, but there was no way she could outrun it, and it seemed like the end for her. Just as the Blackhorn was about to trample her, a lone knight dashed forward and beheaded it in a single, swift motion. He was Roger, notorious as the blood-mad duke for his ruthlessness in battle, and the people around, though murmuring nervously about his terrifying reputations, celebrated that he had saved their lives. Melfiora fell silent, realizing she was face to face with the infamous blood-crazed duke, unsure if the rumors of his brutality were true, but she didn't care. He was too striking to notice. She got up and introduced herself, surprising Roger, as most women would have fled. Then she noticed some of the Blackhorn's blood dripping toward his mouth and urgently urged him to wipe it off, knowing the corrupted blood was toxic and that even raw beast blood could cause severe diarrhea. Roger, stunned by a girl so knowledgeable about monsters, stayed silent, and Melfiora worried she'd overwhelmed him. He appreciated her concern, but revealed he had holy water ready for any blood poisoning and even offered some to her, insisting it was better to be safe. Roger notices that Melfiora's dress is stained with blood and offers to take her somewhere to get a replacement. She politely declines, explaining that monster blood washes out easily with warm water and baking soda, so her dress isn't ruined. Roger, however, isn't talking about the stain itself. Most nobles would be disgusted by clothes tainted with monster blood, so he wonders why she isn't. Without thinking, Melfiora admits she butchers monsters regularly and is used to getting covered in blood, instantly realizing she said too much and apologizing. Instead of disgust, Roger laughs, remembering rumors that Melfiora eats monsters and now seeing it confirmed. Monsters' magical bodies usually make their meat vomit-inducing and fever-causing, so it's discarded, but Melfiora has always thought that wasteful. She admits the rumors are true and confesses that when she sees a corpse, she can't help thinking about how tasty the meat would be, though saying it aloud makes it sound worse. Expecting Roger to awkwardly back away, she forces a smile and waits, only to find that he is instead enchanted by her blood-streaked, lovely smile. Roger can hardly meet her gaze, so he takes Melfiora's hand and quietly leads her away from the party. After a moment of silence, he decides to break the awkwardness by asking if monster meat actually tastes good. Though she's heard the question before and usually regrets answering, she admits that blackhorn meat is surprisingly similar to beef. Unlike most who would laugh or dismiss her, Roger listens seriously, which makes her genuinely happy. She explains that the trick is removing the magic during the bleeding process, making it safe to eat. Intrigued, Roger asks if she'd cook some for him, and she gladly agrees, though she warns that meat from corrupted beasts like the one he killed today can still upset the stomach, so he'll have to wait until she finds clean meat. Roger accepts and says he looks forward to it, but in the meantime insists on getting her a fresh dress. He brings her back to his pavilion, where his subordinate Kos greets them. After Melfiera introduces herself, Roger tells Kos to fetch her a dress while he leads her to a tent and prepares hot water so she can wash off the blood. Embarrassed, Melfiera protests that he's going to too much trouble for her, especially since he's far more covered in blood than she is. Melfiera told Roger to clean himself first, though he was already stripping off his shirt, seeing nothing unusual in it since he often did so. She, however, grew flustered, her heart racing as it always did when knights bared themselves in training. When Roger asked if something was wrong, she admitted honestly that she was admiring his physique. He never thought much about his body, though constant training against monsters had made him muscular. Remembering how impressive he looked when he beheaded the Blackhorn, she asked if he could teach her to do the same. Roger replied that anyone could learn, but her arms lacked the conditioning, so she'd be better off leaving the fighting to him. Still, he offered to hunt any monster she wished, which made her eyes brighten with excitement at all the tastes she longed to try. Just then, Kos returned and lightly scolded Roger for being half-naked in front of a young lady. Roger defended himself, saying it was only his shirt, but Kos still deemed it improper. Later, Melfiera changed into the dress Kos had prepared, delighted by its beautiful design. Roger mentions he borrowed the dress from the queen long ago and thinks it suits Melfiera perfectly, all while holding the head of the Blackhorn, which shocks his men since most ladies would have fainted at its sight, yet Melfiera remains unfazed. They're pleased he finally found someone he connects with. Later that evening, Roger escorts Melfiera to her carriage. She thanks him again for saving her and says goodbye, and he promises a special present for their next meeting. Excited, she requests that if he brings a monster, he capture it alive for better tasting meat. Roger has never done that, but accepts the challenge, knowing it may take time. Meanwhile, Melfiera offers him some scat-bit monster jerky she prepared carefully, ensuring it's safe. Trusting her, Roger bites in without hesitation and finds it surprisingly delicious. Kos scolds him for eating untested food, but Roger insists it's fine and feeds Kos a piece, proving its taste. They agree it's excellent, and Roger tells Melfiera he looks forward to seeing more of her creations. Suddenly, she ducks her head, tears forming at finally being recognized and appreciated for her hobby, then composes herself to bid Roger a final goodbye, eagerly anticipating their next meeting. After several days on the road, Melfiera's carriage finally reaches home just as snow begins to fall. To her surprise, her father is already waiting at the gate. When she approaches, he opens the door and she immediately asks if something is wrong. She first assumes he's upset about her engagement, but he explains it's something else. He's confused about how to handle a marriage proposal from a duke. Shocked, Melfiera learns that Roger has formally asked for her hand, leaving her and her father equally flustered. She hadn't imagined that their pleasant exchange at the banquet would lead to this so soon. Meanwhile, after Melfiera's departure, Roger reports back to Crown Prince Maxim, his elder brother by blood, informing him that his men have cleared the area of threats and destroyed the monster's den. Maxim praises his work and urges him to drop the formality between brothers, but Roger refuses, reminding him that since Maxim became crown prince 17 years ago, and Roger was adopted into the Galbraith family, he now serves only as Maxim's subject. Maxim realizes Roger won't drop the formalities, so he shifts the topic and teases him about his recent date with a redhead. Shocked that Maxim knows, Roger hears his brother claim he keeps tabs on everything he does. While Roger is distracted, Maxim grabs jerky from the picnic basket Melfiera prepared, takes a bite, and praises its flavor. Curious, he asks what meat it is. Roger sighs, saying a crown prince shouldn't eat things blindly, then explains it's made from scat's meat. Intrigued that a monster could taste so good, Maxim wonders if Melfiera made it herself, thinking she might be onto something. But more than the jerky, he's curious about Roger's intentions toward Melfiera. A count's daughter getting involved with a duke is rare, and given Roger's history of failed romances, Maxim suggests this might be his one real chance. Annoyed by his brother's teasing, Roger leaves the tent, frustrated yet thoughtful. Deep down, he admits Maxim might be right. Melfiera's bravery and charm are unlike anyone he's met. Resolving to act, Roger decides to keep his promise and capture the monster she wanted, hoping to surprise her the next time they meet. At Melfiera's home, she and her father examine a jewel-encrusted letter delivered by a duke's messenger riding a blaze eagle. Disappointed for missing the eagle, Melfiera listens as her father asks what happened between her and the duke. She explains she was attacked by a monster and Roger saved her, nothing more. Her father doubts it, especially since Roger, whom she barely knew before the banquet, is now proposing marriage. Reading the letter, Melfiera recognizes Roger's tone as he fondly recalls their time together, but she suspects hidden motives. Her father reminds her she can refuse, though rejecting a duke requires a strong excuse. Later that night, while rereading the letter, Melfiora realizes Roger shares her unusual love for monster meat and assumes he wants to bond over it. As she grips the letter, glowing magic reveals a secret note. Roger plans to visit her before winter ends, specifically tomorrow, the 18th. Her father panics and Melfiora, equally flustered, wonders what Roger truly intends, though worrying now seems pointless. The next morning, Melfiora's stepmother bursts into her room, shocked to see her still in her nightgown. Melfiora quickly lies, claiming she was waiting for Celia to help her choose an outfit, though she'd only just woken up before Celia arrived. Celia isn't cruel but constantly nitpicks Melfiora's choices, especially her decision to marry the infamous blood-mad Duke, something Celia herself once pushed for. Ignoring her, Melfiora silently lets her maids dress her until a thunderous roar echoes outside. She rushes to the window and spots a flock of glacial dragons, Roger's no doubt. Moments later, he appears beside her window, announcing his proposal and the gift he promised. Melfiora lights up with excitement, while Celia, terrified, screams for her to close the window. Instead, Melfiora tells Roger to land by the northern pasture, then quickly shuts the window and hides her blushing face in the curtain, her heart racing as she recalls how effortlessly handsome he looked atop the dragon. While Melfiora tried to calm herself, Celia kept calling for her. When Melfiora finally responded, Celia said she'd lie down because seeing the dragon made her feel sick. Muttering that Roger must be insane to ride dragons and unfit to be a duke, she was quickly stopped by Melfiora, who firmly said she planned to accept Roger's proposal and asked Celia not to insult her future husband. Annoyed, Celia stormed out. About an hour later, Melfiora met Roger in the pasture, explaining she'd only learned of his visit from his letter yesterday and couldn't prepare anything. Roger didn't mind, apologizing instead for arriving so suddenly. Koss joked that came fast because Roger couldn't wait to see her, earning a flustered denial. Roger then asked where to place her gift, pointing to a cage covered with cloth. Realizing he had truly caught the monster for her, Melfiora felt guilty for troubling him. Noticing her hesitation, Roger asked if something was wrong, and she looked up, sincerely thanking him before asking if she could take a peek inside. Roger leads Melfiora into the cage without hesitation. Seeing no movement, she asked if he already killed it, but when he lifts the cloth, the creature, a golden-furred royal moodle, lies unconscious but alive. These rare monsters, similar to cows, usually have white fur, but royal ones turn gold as they mature, making their fur valuable for coats and scarves, though their meat is often wasted. Melfiora, who has never tasted one, expects it to be delicious since it's a fruit and mushroom-eating herbivore. Impressed by its rarity, she asks if Roger is sure about giving her something so precious. He assures her he wouldn't have caught it alive otherwise. Overjoyed, Melfiora thanks him, thrilled she can prepare it however she likes. Her excitement leaves Roger flustered while Koss and the others quietly watch. Shortly after, her father arrives to greet Roger and thank him for the long trip. Roger apologizes for the sudden visit, explaining he wanted her answer to his proposal before winter. Melfiora, still caught up in joy, almost forgets the reason for his visit. She then asks her father to allow Roger's dragons to hunt in the mountains. He agrees but is puzzled, thinking the moodle was supposed to be food for the dragons. Melfiora reveals the moodle is actually for her, surprising her father since he didn't think Roger knew about her hobby. She explains Roger went out of his way just to taste her monster cooking and asks for permission to open a research facility to prepare the noodles. Her father worries Roger might be disturbed by her butchering monsters, but Roger assures him he understands her and knows the rumors, yet still wishes to propose. Delighted, her father welcomes Roger warmly. Before resting, Roger mentions he needs to handle his gift since it's still alive, the living moodle Melfiora asked him to capture. Roger expresses interest in watching the preparation, so her father tells Melfiora to take him to her facility. Riding dragons toward it, Melfiora enjoys the experience but feels uneasy. When Roger senses her hesitation, she claims it's just first-time nerves, though she's actually anxious about how they'll react after seeing her prepare the monster meat, uncertain if he'll truly accept her. When Rovier arrives at the lab, he notices an ancient magic circle on the floor. Curious, he asks Melfiora about it, and she explains it was her mother's creation, though she's made some improvements. It's what she uses to process monster meat. Roger finds the idea brilliant, but doubts the circle alone could drain a monster's magic. Melfiora then mentions another tool and retrieves a quartz flask from the storage shed, explaining it draws both mana and blood when she channels magic through it, turning it colorful in the process. Impressed by her craftsmanship, Roger listens as Melfiora asks a favor. She wants to see a muse's sword behead a monster again. Later, as she prepares to begin, she admits cleaning the mood alone would take too long. Roger signals his subordinates, and the knights efficiently strip the creature in minutes, leaving piles of soft golden fur. Admiring it briefly, Melfiora focuses back on the task. Roger removes his jacket and asks if she's ready. She prays for the creature and vows not to waste its meat before activating the circle and giving him the signal to strike. With a swift, precise swing, Rogier severs the mood's head before Malfeira can even follow his movement. As the creature falls, she begins extracting its blood and magic, chanting over a flask that quickly fills. It's her first time handling a beast this large, and the excess magic blood causes the flask to crack. Unable to stop mid-spell, she panics until Rogier swiftly replaces it with another, allowing her to finish the extraction perfectly. Though relieved, Rogier is puzzled that the carcass hasn't shrunk, and Malfeira explains her spell only drains blood, keeping other moisture to preserve flavor. Impressed, Rogier asks about the spell's origin, and she tells him it was her mother's creation from 17 years ago, born during a famine when the land was barren and people starved. Her mother sought to make monsters a sustainable food source, and Malfeira now continues that work, hoping to refine the process so anyone could use it to turn monsters from threats into nourishment. After her mother's passing, Malfeira took on the challenge herself, though she admits she enjoys sampling rare monsters occasionally. Rogier senses her noble intentions but raises another question, lifting the flask of magic blood to ask its purpose. Malfeira casually explains she uses its energy to light fires and power lamps, enough to last 2 months before refilling. Rogier is stunned that's all she does with it. When she asks if there's another use, he bursts into laughter, realizing she doesn't understand what she's achieved. He tells her she's done what even royal mages couldn't, extracting and storing pure magic essence in a bottle, something that could become a weapon of mass destruction in the wrong hands. Malfeira is shocked, realizing she's unknowingly created something dangerous, but Rogier reassures her, saying he knows she'd never harm anyone. Relieved, he jokes that he's glad the rumors about her drinking blood aren't true since her mesmerizing hair almost had him thinking she might be a vampire. Flustered by his words, Malfeira blurts out how dazzling he looked riding his dragon, leaving both red-faced and silent. The awkward moment lingers until Kos cuts in, reminding them there's still work to do, prompting the two to hurriedly move along. Malfeira later approaches Rogier with a hunting permit. Since the dragon wasn't satisfied after eating the mood's organs, Rogier needs to hunt more monsters before it becomes fussy. His stomach growls too, and Malfeira suggests they try a bit of the meat early. As they prepare to cook, Rogier remembers something special he brought, a slice mill. He lets Malfeira taste it, and she's amazed by the rich mix of spices. Rogier explains he took it from his head chef before leaving home, and it pairs perfectly with meat. They prepare 2 skewers, mouths watering, but Kos suddenly appears, suspicious of the aroma. Rogier tries to deny it, yet the smell gives them away. Remembering the permit, Rogier orders Kos to hunt monsters instead, but Kos insists Rogier join since he's their best fighter. When Rogier tries to refuse, Kos guilt-trips him for eating while his team starves. Sighing, Rogier agrees to make a skewer for him too, only for Kos to reveal the whole team is already there. Rogier prepares a skewer for each of them, and when his is finally ready, Kos stops him from eating, saying it must first be tested for poison. Kos takes the first bite, and to his surprise, the meat tastes far better than expected, tender, rich, and melting in his mouth. Belf is pleased, while Rogier grows impatient from hunger, urging Kos to declare it safe. Amused, Kos teases him, saying true safety can only be confirmed after hours, but no one wants to wait that long. Malfeira, exasperated, declares that if anyone gets sick, she'll make the medicine herself. Assured, everyone digs in and enjoys the incredible flavor, with Malfeira amazed by how good it turned out. Rogier praises her as a genius for making monster meat taste divine, though she humbly credits her mother's research. He insists her own skill made it possible. Rogier and his comrades had eaten monster meat only when supplies ran out during missions, but it always tasted awful since none of them knew how to prepare it. After tasting Malfeira's version, he asked his men what they thought, and they all agreed she was a culinary genius. As they grilled more skewers, Rogier reached for a third one, only for Malfeira to call his name. Thinking she was about to scold him for overeating, he quickly said he could still finish dinner later, but she had something else in mind. She wanted him to come to the lab. Following her inside, Rogier entered a cluttered old room filled with research materials. Malfeira apologized for the mess, but he assured her it was normal for labs to look that way. While looking around, he noticed several scats bit spikes and asked about them. She explained they were used for trapping monsters she studied. Rogier was surprised that she could craft traps, but she said the knights or local hunters sometimes helped her, though she'd often hunted alone. Shocked, Rogier asked if the townsfolk disapproved of her research, and Malfeira admitted they did, explaining that people still refuse to accept the idea of eating monster meat. Despite her mother once saving the starving masses by making monster meat edible, people refused to accept the truth, calling it taboo and denying the research that kept them alive. Rogier admires Malfeira's strength for continuing her mother's work despite constant ridicule, though he knows the criticism still hurts her. Wondering why she persists, he asks her directly, and she responds by asking if he remembers the incident from 17 years ago. He says he could never forget. It's why he was adopted into the Galbraith family. Realizing how painful the topic must be, Roger gently takes her hand and guides her to the sofa so she won't have to face him as she speaks. He reminds her he came to propose, explaining that he already knows of her family's controversy, but doesn't want her to abandon her research. If she marries him, she could continue freely with Galria's support. Melfiora stiffens and offers to teach him everything about her research instead, saying there's no need to marry her for that. But Rogier insists she's misunderstood. He wants to learn about her, not her work. Admitting he's hardly the ideal partner as the infamous blood-mad Duke, he asks what she truly thinks of him. Melfiora can only stare, stunned, realizing she had been wrong all along. Roger didn't pursue her for her research, but because he genuinely liked her. Roger asks what she thinks of him as a partner. Melfiora hasn't really considered it before, but marrying him wouldn't be a bad idea. Her father had already agreed she could marry a knight, so a duke would be even better. The thought of spending every day with someone like Roger makes her heart race. Yet she hesitates, worried she'd look inferior beside him and damage his image. Still, the offer is too tempting. She asks why he chose her when he could have any woman of high status, doubting his family would accept her given the rumors about her and the stigma surrounding monster meat. Roger interrupts, assuring her his people would welcome her. His territory, Galbraith, is filled with monsters that multiply no matter how many he hunts, and disposing of the carcasses has become a burden. To him, monsters are mere pests, but hearing Melfiora speak passionately about eating them changed his view. During expeditions, he and his men had eaten monster meat only for survival, unaware it could be purified of harmful magic as she does. Roger believes turning nuisance monsters into food will benefit his people, and Melfiora feels overjoyed that her research could help others. He promises to shield her from the noble's scorn, but she admits she still feels unworthy of someone like him. Thinking she's trying to reject him, Roger grows uneasy until Melfiora quickly clarifies. She only meant she lacks the skills most maidens have. Still, if he accepts her as she is, she would gladly marry him. Her only true gift lies in research, yet she can at least turn the monsters he slays into fine meals so nothing goes to waste. Their talk ends when Claude, Melfiora's guard, arrives to inform Roger that her father awaits him at the castle. Before leaving, Claude quietly warns Melfiora not to share sensitive matters with someone she's known for just 2 days, and she heeds his caution. As they walk down the hall, Roger notices Claude's suspicious watchfulness but understands it's only natural given his fearsome reputation as the blood-mad Duke. Roger meets with Melfiora's father to finalize their engagement. The Count, nervous about speaking casually with the Duke, is relieved when Roger praises Melfiora's dedication, but still asks why he's interested in her. Roger explains that during the banquet, he would found the event dull, and even when the beast attacked, he felt nothing unusual, until Melfiora. She didn't flinch at the sight of blood or show fear, making him realize she might truly accept him as he is. He admits the proposal was sudden, spurred on by a meddlesome relative, but he wanted to make things official quickly. Before signing the contract, the Count asks if that's really his only reason. Roger assures him it isn't and goes on to describe everything he admires about Melfiora, proving his genuine affection. Convinced and relieved, the Count confides that he once feared Melfiora's lifestyle would bring her disgrace in a world that condemns eating monsters, and that he could do little to protect her. Roger promises that once she joins the Galbraith family, he'll protect her with everything he has. 10 days after their engagement, Roger returned home while Melfiora packed her research documents with the help of her knights, preparing to move to his territory. Roger insisted she bring everything from her facility and even left some of his knights to assist her. Though officially engaged, the reality still hadn't sunk in for Melfiora. When Roger magically sealed their marriage contract as a sign of devotion, he asked her to keep it secret from Koss, fearing his teasing. The heartfelt moment turned awkward when her father coughed to break the silence. Before the engagement, he had confided a secret to Roger, asking him not to tell Melfiora, but Roger immediately revealed it, exposing that her father had spread rumors about her being a monster meat muncher. Though the act was meant to protect her research from being misused for destructive purposes, Roger made it clear he didn't want to hear such rumors again. Melfiora's father receives the message while she, barely paying attention, remains unaware of the conversation's details. They assure her it's nothing to worry about, though curiosity still lingers. Before she can dwell on it, Mullen, one of the knights, informs her that the frozen royal Moodle is ready for transport and asks about the Moodle fur. She says she'll leave it for her father and stepbrother to make golden coats and thanks him for his help. But that she's nearly done packing before Rogier arrives. As she prepares, she wonders if it's normal for engaged couples to live together so soon, though Roger insisted because winter would soon cut off travel for 6 months. A knock interrupts her thoughts. Herman, the head butler who's cared for her since childhood, tells her the escort has arrived. Though sad to see her go, he's proud of her. As Melfiora leaves her room, it hits her that she won't return for a long time, so she goes to see her father once more. But upon entering his room, she finds Cecilia waiting on the couch instead. Melfiora is surprised to see Celia and asks why she's there, but Celia says that even as his stepmother, she wants to see her off before she leaves. When Melfiora asks about her father, Celia explains he's outside making sure her belongings are handled. Wanting to end the talk quickly, Melfiora tries to excuse herself, but Celia scoffs, accusing her of seducing the Duke and reminding her that her son is the rightful heir of the Martial Raid family. Melfiora calmly replies that it's obvious since she's marrying out, so she has no reason to care. Celia warns that if Rogier ever abandons her, she won't be welcomed back, and though Melfiora wants to insult her, she instead chooses restraint and leaves. Outside, her father finishes preparing and asks if she's ready, complimenting her coat, which once belonged to her mother Elise. Shocked, Melfiora listens as he recalls how Elise, coming from the warm south, was thrilled by her first snow but caught a cold soon after from overexcitement. Melfiora chuckles at the story, realizing her mother had a playful side, while her father quietly wishes he could share more memories with her. Moments later, Rogier arrives to pick up Melfiora, asking if she's sure she has everything since there's still a pile of her things nearby. She explains those are just old drafts of her research and no longer useful. Rogier offers to burn them to keep her work from falling into the wrong hands, and she agrees. He then tells her father he'll be taking her now, helping her onto his dragon as they prepare to leave. Though saddened, her father takes comfort knowing she'll visit next spring, until Rogier mentions he plans to keep her with him until their wedding in the fall. Surprised, her father asks about the preparations for her joining the Galbraith family, but Rogier assures him he'll provide everything she needs. To save them the trouble of burning the papers, Rogier casts a spell, summoning great pillars of fire that engulf the pile. Claude shouts that Rogier went too far, and Rogier apologizes, admitting he just wanted to impress Melfiora. He then thanks Claude for protecting her and tells him he sees promise in him, inviting him to join the Galbraith Knights if he ever wishes to. That night, Rogier and his knights fitted their dragons with glowing lights to stay visible in the dark. Watching from above, Melfiora found the sight mesmerizing, thinking they must look like shooting stars from the ground. When they flew over the port town of Anver, she asked if they would rest there, but Rogier said they'd continue to Fort Ritterard. He had offered to find her a place in the city if she disliked the fortress, yet she was eager to stay there instead. Rogier was surprised, warning that the fort was plain and uncomfortable, but Melfiora didn't mind. It was the nearby river, known for spawning fish monsters, that excited her. She wanted to catch and cook one herself, and Rogier mentioned that xynazes were common this season. She lit up at the thought of cooking one, and he admitted he'd love to try it too, though they'd need to set traps and wait till morning. Disappointed she couldn't have it tonight, she perked up again when Rogier promised fresh fish for breakfast if they set the trap after landing. Her bright look distracted him for a moment before he joked that her cooking would surely beat the fort's stale rations. Delighted, she recalled Koss saying the knights had awful luck with monster meat and asked if Rogier ever cooked it himself. He laughed awkwardly, admitting they only burned it over open flames during long expeditions when supplies ran out, which always ended terribly. He grimly remembered the Bolivia Screamwood and Gargantus, meals he wished he could forget. Soon after, Fort Ritterard came into view, and Rogier told Melfiora to hold on tight as they descended. Upon landing, the guards hurried over to greet him, but he waved them off, saying he had a special guest and wanted the western wing prepared for them. The guards gladly agree, but warn they have nothing fancy to offer. Rogier asks Melfiora to unpack, then pauses and suggests arranging a place in the city instead, realizing how crude the fort is for someone like her. Melfiora assures him it's fine, saying she often slept on the lab floor and that staying here comforts her since he's nearby. Flustered yet pleased, Rogier leads her to her room, telling her to rest after the long trip. She smiles, saying the ride was comfortable thanks to him keeping her warm. Suddenly, she catches an unpleasant cooking smell and hurries to the kitchen, where Mullen and Zeph are making a large pot of porridge. Trying not to offend, she points out it won't be enough for everyone and suggests adding her pre-salted noodle meat for flavor. Mullen hesitates, worried about wasting the limited supply. Seth remains uneasy, not because of the taste, but because he still can't trust the idea of eating monster meat. When everyone else first tried it, he had been busy and missed the chance, and even after hearing it was safe, his doubts linger. To ease his worries, Melfiora grills a slice over the fire, assuring him she already removed all the magic toxins. Nervously, Seth takes the meat, and seeing that, Mullen asks for some too. Melfiora happily prepares another piece, which Mullen eats without hesitation, praising her cooking. Just then, Rogier appears, clearly displeased to see his fiancée cooking for other men. Melfiora calmly tells him she made some for him too, but Rogier, still sulking, refuses to eat. Not wanting it to go to waste, she recalls how her maid used to feed her stubborn little brother and decides to do the same, telling Rogier to open wide. Startled, he obeys instinctively, and she slips the meat into his mouth. Malfeora asks Roger what he thinks, and he admits the meat is so good he can't stay mad. Since Roger and Mullen already ate theirs, Zeph tries it too and is surprised by how tasty it is. Pleased, Malfeora asks them to help mix the noodle meat into the porridge. That night, the knights are amazed by the flavor and their spirits lift. Roger praises Malfeora's cooking, but she modestly says she only diced and fried the meat before adding it in. Still, Roger is impressed. Realizing Malfeora hasn't eaten yet, he offers her a spoonful, telling her to open wide. Blushing, she remembers doing the same to him earlier and tries to refuse, but he insists, so she lets him feed her. She enjoys it and says she can handle the rest, yet Roger playfully feeds her again. When they finish, he tells her he wants to talk. Specifically, he wants her to stop addressing him so formally, which makes Malfeora realize how often she uses his title. Now that they're engaged, she decides there's no need for formalities and agrees to call him by name. Hearing it so sweetly warms Roger's heart, but suddenly his eyes flash gold and he winces in pain. Ralph panics and calls for help, yet Roger stops Mullen, saying it's fine. He just lost control of his magic for a moment and only has a slight headache. Malfeora worries it's because of the monster meat she gave him, but Mullen reassures her it's not her fault. Roger's magic is simply immense, and though his body can hold more than most, it still has limits. He just needs to release some of it. To ease her concern, Roger suggests hunting fish monsters to burn off his excess power, planning to leave in the morning with Mullen accompanying him. Even so, Malfeora can't shake her fear, knowing that like monsters, humans with too much magic can become poisoned and lose their minds, the same fate that once claimed her mother. As a child, Malfeora's last memory of her mother was watching her fade away in bed, trying to stay strong despite the inevitable. Her mother explained that her powerful magic often went out of control if not released, leaving her sick and bedridden. When Malfeora asked how she could help, her mother smiled proudly but was already beyond saving. After her death, rumors spread that monster meat caused her demise, but Malfeora knew the truth. An incomplete spell had made her mother absorb the monster's magic instead of purging it. Determined to honor her memory, Malfeora continued her mother's research and learned that human bodies, being weaker than monsters, die easily from magic toxins after long exposure. Had she realized this sooner, she might have saved her mother. Now, she vows to protect Roger from the same fate. Later, Malfeora wakes in bed, confused, remembering only that she had been desperately searching for a way to save him. Realizing she must have fallen asleep on the floor, Malfeora figures Roger carried her to bed and blushed in embarrassment. After getting up to find him, she spots him calmly drinking tea in the dining area. When she asks if he's alright, Roger assures her he's fine. His magic isn't strong enough to cause any toxins yet. To prove it, he presses his forehead to hers, showing he has no fever. Relieved but noticing his body feels cold, she listens as he explains he got soaked catching the monster fish he mentioned last night. Feeling guilty for making him go out in the cold, she says she's more worried about warming him up than seeing the fish. Roger pulls her close, saying this will keep him warm, and though her face turns red, she secretly enjoys being in his arms. Malfeora asks if Roger has already killed the fish, but he replies that it's still alive in the metal net he set by the river. Excited, she says she wants to start preparing the Xanas since dawn is near, and Roger agrees to join her. She protests, feeling bad that he hasn't slept after staying up all night catching it, but he insists he's fine and jokingly says a hug would make him feel better. Embarrassed, she says she hasn't bathed yet, but he laughs that he's probably dirtier after all the work. When she turns away in fluster, Roger hugs her from behind, making her even more embarrassed. At that moment, Seth walks in, greets them awkwardly, and quickly turns away, sensing he interrupted something. Later, when the knights wake up, Malfeora tells them she plans to cook the Xanas for breakfast and asks for flour and oil to fry it. Seth volunteers to fetch the ingredients while she and Roger head to the river. As they walk, Roger asks if she has everything ready as she cheerfully shows him the magic circles drawn on oil paper. Curious, he listens as she explains she couldn't draw the circle by the river since the water would wash it away, so this was the best alternative. After reaching the river, Roger tells Malfeora to stay back since the Xanas is still dangerous. He orders the knights to pull up the net and warns them to be careful, explaining that monster fish are powerful in water and could easily break bones with a single hit. While he instructs the knights on how to haul it safely, Malfeora can't help but admire how confident and commanding Roger looks. When the Xanas finally surfaces, she's stunned by its massive size. It's far more impressive than any illustration she's seen, and she eagerly tries to get closer. Roger stops her, reminding her that one wrong move could cost her an arm. Once the creature is out of the water, Roger asks if she's ready for him to behead it, but Malfeora insists on doing it herself. Thinking it's just a fish, she lifts the sword only to find it too heavy and realizes she can't possibly manage it. Roger reassures her not to feel bad since mastering the sword takes time and says she can leave this part to him, though he admits he's never killed a fish before. Curious about the proper method, he asks for her guidance, and Melfiora explains that the first step is to blind the Ixanas, since fish stop moving when they can't see. Melfiora covers Xana's eye with a cloth, making it go still as expected, then tells Roger to proceed with the next step, stab behind the eyes and above the gills to destroy its brain. Roger follows her directions, and after a brief struggle, the light fades from the creature's eyes, signaling its death. Melfiora then surrounds the body with magic circles and begins the extraction. Ixana's magic energy is dense, but since there's little blood, the process goes smoothly and she finishes without issue. She hands the flask of collected energy to Roger, and though she originally planned to have him behead the fish, she hesitates, not wanting to rely on him too much. Instead, she asks if he can teach her how to do it herself. Roger chuckles, saying he doesn't mind handling it since helping with her cooking makes him happy. Melfiora is touched, admitting she enjoys having him around, unlike back home where she always worked alone. After the knights reposition the Ixanas, Roger prepares to behead it, but pauses to ask if there's anything specific she wants him to consider before he begins. Melfiora advises Roger to start from the point he marked earlier and slice diagonally toward the gills, a difficult angle for most but effortless for a swordsman of his skill. His precise cut leaves the flesh untouched, astonishing Melfiora and the watching knights. Later, they return to the fortress where Szeth finishes setting up the outdoor cooking area, explaining that the kitchen is too small. Melfiora doesn't mind, as cleaning up will be easier. Wanting to remove the fish's skin and scales first, she asks if anyone has experience, and a knight named Ambry volunteers. His careful work leaves not a trace of meat on the skin. With the fish ready, Melfiora heats 2 pots of oil, one hotter than the other, to fry the meat in stages for perfect results. Roger, intrigued by her method, offers to help. Surprised but pleased, Melfiora asks him to watch the temperature of the hotter pot, warning him to be careful, while she begins preparing the batter. Since there were no eggs, Melfiora decided to mix water, flour, and spices instead. She dipped pieces of Xana's meat into the batter and fried them first in cooler oil until golden brown, then moved them to hotter oil for a crisp exterior and moist center. When the first batch was done, she served Roger some while the knights followed her instructions to cook the rest. Roger tried making his own batch but ended up burning it. Melfiora told him not to worry since few get it right the first time and his was still edible, just a bit dry. To prove it wasn't bad, she asked him to feed her one. Though hesitant, Roger agreed after she said she wanted to taste what he made and couldn't feed herself with sticky hands. She asked him to blow on it first, and once it cooled, he fed her. Melfiora was surprised by how chewy the dry fish was, and Roger, after tasting it himself, found it quite good too. Then they tried the moist ones, and Melfiora loved their soft, fluffy texture. Melfiora couldn't decide whether to make the chewy dry fish she liked or the moist one, so Roger suggested making both, knowing the knights would have mixed preferences. They prepared plenty of each, and as expected, many knights favored Roger's dry version, which proved ideal as food rations for missions. Realizing its usefulness, Melfiora thanked him, but Roger brushed it off as an accident. He then asked if she was all right after standing all morning, and she assured him she was fine and enjoying his company. Pleased, Roger noticed knights carrying dishes inside and asked why the tables weren't set outdoors. Melfiora explained she had the chefs prepare bread and vegetables to go with the fish, so everything was arranged in the Great Hall. She told him to head there since no one would start eating without him. Though reluctant to leave her, Roger was eventually pulled away by Mullen. Once they left, Melfiora began quenching the firewood, feeling guilty for making Roger work so much when he needed rest. As she cleaned up, Szeth and Ambry arrived, offering to help her finish quickly so they could all share a good meal together. Grateful, Melfiora invited them to try some of the fish. Szeth and Ambry examined the bowl Melfiora holds, noticing the Ixana's meat looks different. She explains it's belly meat, unsuitable for frying, but she wants their opinion before wasting it. They both taste it and find it surprisingly good, though Ambry suggests it would be better with sour fruit juice. Szeth recalls some fruit prepared for breakfast and suggests getting some. Excited, Melfiora urges them to hurry before it's gone. At the hall, she sees the knights eating and joins Roger when he calls her over. Szeth soon arrives with the fruit called dabo, known for its sour juice. Melfiora pours it over her fish, delighted by the taste, and offers Roger a try. Curious but inexperienced with sour flavors, Roger takes a bite only to grimace at the sharp taste. Though he stays polite, Melfiora notices and mentally notes to avoid sour flavors for him in the future. After breakfast, Roger orders everyone to mount their dragons, and they resume their journey to Galbraith Castle. As they traveled, Melfiora grew curious about Roger's life in Galbraith. The knights they met clearly respected him, but she wondered how the people of his duchy saw him. She asked about the cities in Galbraith, and Roger explained that there were once 30, but the Great Famine 17 years ago reduced them to 12. During that crisis, the previous duke died suddenly, leading to Roger being chosen as his successor, which shocked Melfiora since a duke dying in a famine was unheard of. When she pressed for details, Roger told her that an abnormal surge of monsters had erupted from the Urzinia forest, and before the knights could respond, the dense magic power triggered a flood of blood-mad beasts across Galbraith. Malfear hadn't known any of this, and Roger understood, saying the former duke had fulfilled his duty and contained the disaster despite the heavy loss of knights, preventing it from spreading to other nations. When she asked why no reinforcements came, Roger said the king likely wanted to help, but the famine left the kingdom with nothing to spare, and besides, the knights of Galbraith had sworn to protect the nation with their lives, believing that dying in service was the highest honor, a vow Roger and his knights still upheld. He explained that if a disaster like that happened again, it would be his duty to risk his life to protect the kingdom. Malfear froze, realizing he was calmly admitting he was ready to die at any time, even smiling as he said it, as if he had already accepted his fate. She knew she had no right to protest, yet his expression reminded her too much of her mother, who kept smiling even as she faded away, and the thought of losing Roger terrified her. She begged him not to speak of dying with that smile again, unable to bear the idea of him accepting such a hopeless end. Her mother had gone in resignation, and she refused to let Roger follow the same path. She vowed to continue her research and prevent any future calamity. Seeing her distress, Roger apologized for sounding like he didn't value his life, insisting that wasn't true. But that wasn't the only reason she was upset. Their lives were now tied together, and she wanted to share his burdens. Taking his hand, she declared that even if she wasn't a knight, she would do everything she could to ensure tragedy never touched him. Roger, struck by her seriousness and moved by her concern, could only tell her he couldn't allow her to be put in danger for his sake. Malfear isn't asking Roger to fight like a knight. She knows she can't match him or the others in battle, but she believes her research can still support them and wants him to rely on her. Seeing tears build in her eyes, Roger pulls her into a hug and gently tells her not to cry, understanding her feelings even though death has always been a natural part of a knight's path for him. When he asks if she wants to hear about his past, she eagerly agrees. He explains that he was the second son of the previous king and had a good relationship with his older brother Maxim, yet their treatment differed drastically. Maxim, blessed with golden hair and purple eyes like the wise King Maximus, was praised as the second coming of the great sage, while Roger's eyes drew attention for storing excess magic energy, often causing uncontrolled bursts that damaged parts of the castle. Maxim was admired for his intelligence, but Roger was seen as a troublemaker and grew up feeling like a failure. Though he eventually learned to endure the magic in his body, the title of Outcrop Prince stuck, and people kept their distance. The only ones unafraid to approach him were the knights, and eventually Kos was assigned to watch over him. Roger remembers Kos constantly criticizing him, yet Kos was the first knight to swear loyalty, and their rough start eventually turned into a close friendship. Kos could have joined the royal guards like his father, but instead chose to stay with Roger and followed him to the Galbraith territory when Roger became a duke. To avoid a succession conflict, the previous king granted Roger the title of Duke of Galbraith, placing him under Maxim, the future king. At that point, the kingdom was weakened by drought and famine, nobles were nearing rebellion, and some even pushed for Roger to seize the throne and attack other nations for resources. Tension rose between the pro-war and anti-war factions, and Kos's father lost his life amid the turmoil, while rumors spread about monsters overrunning Galbraith. Reaching his limit, Roger confronted Maxim and offered to give up his claim to the throne, choosing to take on the ducal role so Maxim could rule and the people's suffering could end. Though Maxim regretted seeing Roger carry such a heavy burden so young, he knew there was no other option. They consulted their father and soon informed the nobles that the king would abdicate, with Maxim taking the throne and Roger becoming the Duke of Galbraith. The brothers then pursued their new duties, and years later Roger requested a meeting. He argued that the Galbraith knights deserved better rewards for their risks, and Maxim agreed, proposing that any knight who served 5 years could earn a promotion into the royal guard. Roger approved, believing it would raise morale. He then brought up the waste of discarded monster parts, noting their value in claws, hides, and horns, and suggested the castle buy them from the knights. Maxim accepted, promising good payment for quality materials. Roger's efforts greatly improved the region, though he knew success came easier because he was the king's brother. To Malfear, his achievements were remarkable, and to Roger, they were worth risking his life to protect. Malfear stops him and insists they should focus on preventing another cataclysm instead of sacrificing his life. Roger doubts it can be done, but she explains her research on extracting magic toxins from living creatures and believes that if she can apply it properly, she could stop monsters from going mad, removing the need for him to risk himself. Roger is taken aback, realizing he never considered that possibility. She adds that if she perfects the method, she might even reverse the madness and make monster meat edible again, which makes Roger smile because only Malfear would think about new cooking ideas at a time like this, and it's one of the reasons he loves her. He kisses her forehead, leaving her so startled she nearly faints, and while she assumes he's teasing, he assures her his feelings are real. As they fly, Roger notices they are nearing Galbraith territory above the vast ozone forest, too large for him to navigate without a map. Melfiera mentions rumors that the forest is filled with monsters, and Roger confirms it. The land is rich with magic ores, and the soil is so saturated with mana that only monsters thrive there. Melfiera is about to question Roger when he suddenly senses danger and tells her to get off his lap. She obeys just before Mullen radios in, warning that a flock of Bergum is closing in. Roger stays composed, orders the knights into formation, and prepares for evasive flight. Curious after hearing they're being chased, Melfiera looks back and is horrified by the monster's appearance. When Mullen reports they're accelerating, Roger tells everyone to prepare to speed up and gives Melfiera wind goggles. He apologizes that her first visit turned into an attack, but she takes it in stride, though Roger is puzzled why the Bergun would attack a large group. With no time to dwell on it, he tells her to hold tight and launches acceleration magic, followed by the knights. Melfiera marvels at their speed before realizing the ground is getting uncomfortably close. Roger pulls up at the last moment to avoid a crash, terrifying Melfiera so much she nearly screams. Trying to distract herself, she imagines how good the birds would taste, only to panic again when she realizes they might be thinking the same about her. The flock keeps tailing them, and although Roger would normally fall back to handle them, he refuses to risk Melfiera's safety. He orders the other knights to scatter the birds' formation and warns Melfiera to brace as he accelerates. She insists she'll be fine, but his next spell pushes their speed so hard she can barely keep her eyes open even with goggles. Behind them, Mullen struggles to hit anything at this range, and he and Zeph can't figure out why the birds are so relentless today. They suggest landing at a nearby fort to counterattack, but Roger rejects the plan as too dangerous and chooses to head straight for the Galbraith defensive line. Melfiera then realizes he's running because of her, and the dragons are already slowed by all the gear she brought. Feeling like a burden, she suddenly remembers she rigged her bags to explode if forced open, and thinks they could use that as a distraction. Roger refuses her suggestion immediately, knowing how important her belongings are and unwilling to risk losing them. When she then asks him to drop her to the ground so he can fight freely, he rejects that too, insisting he can't protect her if they separate. Sensing she feels like a burden, he reassures her that everything will be fine once they reach the defense line where soldiers are waiting. Though comforted, Melfiera still wishes she could help. Lacking attack spells and unable to use paper circles effectively in midair, she suddenly remembers the flask of Xana's magic blood, something Roger once said held enough power to create weapons of mass destruction. Throwing it alone won't work, so she scribbles every ancient magic circle she can recall onto the flask to amplify its force. Handing it to him, she asks him to add his bodily fluids to activate it, leaving him confused, until she explains that only he with the strongest magic can cast the spell. Roger studies the flask, stunned by how many spells she managed to pack into it. Explosion, eruption, fire, gust, and blaze. Roger, amused to be holding what's essentially a pocket nuke, slices his hand to smear blood on the flask and activates the spell, asking Melfiera when she even had time to think of it. She admits she just came up with it, which surprises him, though she's far more worried about the cut and insists on treating it once they're safe. He agrees, but first they have to escape. He orders his knights to gather as much acceleration magic as possible because on his signal they'll blast away at full speed. Only Mullen is told to stay put for a special task. When Roger reaches the rear, he explains that Mullen must act as their decoy and fly straight into the swarm. Mullen fears he's being sent to die, but Roger assures him that he just needs to pull the monster's attention long enough for Roger to use Melfiera's bomb, and that he is to survive no matter what. Roger signals the others to ascend while Mullen dives into the flock, scattering their formation exactly as planned. Once Mullen clears the blast zone, Roger hurls the blood-primed flask at one of the birds. The monster gulps the bait on instinct, but Roger knows the explosion won't be stopped and tells Melfiera to wait. A moment later, a surge of magical energy erupts with crushing pressure, and he warns her to brace herself as her drawn spells trigger. The blast condenses into a giant fireball worthy of Oppenheimer, shocking Melfiera and making the knights admit it might have been overkill, though it did solve their monster problem and left Mullen unharmed. Melfiera regrets the wasted monster meat and feels horrified realizing the destructive power of the pure magic extract she had created while only thinking about cooking. Roger's warning about its nation-level threat suddenly feels very real, so she asks if her research is too dangerous. Seeing her worry, he assures her no one will rebuke her and encourages her dedication, reminding her that the extracted energy isn't limited to weapons, it can fuel cooking and countless other uses. Confident it will benefit society, he adds that they can start testing it in the Galbraith region right away since people would welcome an alternative to firewood. Melfiora brightens when she learns her invention could give people steady heat and light through winter, realizing it might actually help others, a thought she never had back home, where no one cared about her research. Roger's interest and guidance make her deeply grateful, and she couldn't be happier. He, in turn, thanks her for the quick thinking that helped them win, but she insists the credit is mostly his since the spell's activation depends on the user's magic, and only he could handle those rushed circles. Roger calls it a team effort and casually suggests they go monster hunting together someday, which instantly becomes the highlight of her day. Excited, she asks if he's serious, and when he confirms it, she starts celebrating right as Cos crashes in at full speed, having sensed the earlier explosion and thinking Roger was in danger. Roger simply tells him he's late. He and Melfiora already handled everything. Cos relaxes when he learns everyone is safe, but the moment he realizes Roger caused the explosion, he erupts, scolding him for using such a reckless attack. Melfiora timidly raises her hand to confess she was actually the one who made it, but the soldiers accompanying Cos arrive first and immediately swarm her, thrilled to finally meet Roger's bride. Their sudden wave of compliments leaves her flustered, unused to so much kindness. The group then reaches the Galbraith Midley, where Roger's castle, formerly a fortress built to fend off monster attacks, stands at its center. Melfiora finds its fortress-like design strange until Roger explains the city was once a defensive outpost, still called a fortress city by some. Curious, she asks if monsters can still reach this far, and Roger admits they occasionally wander in, though far less than before, making life mostly peaceful. As she admires the towering walls unlike anything from her home, he adds that the forest used to sit much closer until he pulled the defense line back. People first settled here because the former Duke used it as his base, but fear of monsters still lingered, and the cataclysm only made things worse. Looking down from the walls, Melfiora notices scorched ground and assumes it's the aftermath of Roger defending the city, though he insists it isn't as serious as it looks. Ready to enter, Roger sends Mullen to alert the guards to open the main gate and tells Cos to bring Melfiora's luggage to the castle later. He then carries her through the entrance, explaining they must fly through the tunnel because a magic barrier is active to stop aerial monsters. She's impressed, but since the barrier drains mana, they can't keep it up constantly. It was likely activated after news of the monster flock, which makes her uneasy about another attack, though nothing is certain. To be cautious, Roger advises they stay alert for the rest of the day, and finally welcomes her to his city. Once they arrive, Melfiora checks her luggage at Roger's request, only to keep feeling the stare of his dragon. She's unsettled until she realizes it isn't watching her. It's fixated on the leftover royal moodle meat in Roger's hand. Feeling sorry for the creature, she asks him to let it have some. Roger hesitates, wanting to save the meat for later, but gives in when he sees how eager his dragon is. After feeding it, he welcomes Melfiora to his castle. Crossing the bridge, she notices the moat filled with bacta-fish, monsters used to clean waste, and briefly wonders if they might taste as good as Xana's. Then she catches her reflection in the water and panics at how frizzy her hair has become from the chase. Not wanting to meet anyone looking like a mess, she hurriedly calls out to Roger, saying she has a question. Roger pauses to hear her out, and his calm reaction to her messy hair makes Melfiora momentarily question whether she's overthinking, though she quickly reminds herself that a duke's wife must look presentable. As he waits for her explanation, he notices she's sitting by the moat and assumes she's curious about the bacta, casually mentioning how tasty bacta fish are when stewed. Distracted, Melfiora excitedly admits she's never tried one before, and when Roger offers to let her taste one, she happily agrees before realizing she's gone completely off topic. She finally explains that she wants to tidy herself up before being introduced to everyone and needs a room for that. Realizing his oversight, Roger immediately calls Mullen, orders him to summon the Blanche Course, and apologizes for not having any chambermaids since the castle hasn't had a duchess in ages. The Blanche Corps, a squad of female knights, arrives, and Roger instructs them to treat Melfiora with proper respect. Their captain, Blanche, greets her warmly, leaving Melfiora stunned by her striking appearance. The two remaining knights, Vice Captain Natalie and Lillian, listen as Roger explains that Melfiora just finished her first flight and needs help recovering. Blanche immediately agrees. Melfiora then asks Roger when he plans to introduce her to everyone, and he decides dinner will be best, giving her a few hours to prepare. As she turns to leave, Roger takes her hand, removes his glove, and kisses it, leaving her flushed with embarrassment since the knights are watching. He reminds her it's nothing shocking they are engaged and points out his room nearby if she ever needs him. After he leaves, Natalie calls Melfiora over and invites her into her new room. Melfiora is stunned by how beautiful it is but hesitates at the door, afraid her dirty shoes will stain the soft carpet. Blanche notices and simply lifts her up and carries her to a chair, which flusters Melfiora even more. Blanche kneels to massage her feet, but Melfiera quickly insists on doing it herself. As she removes her boots, Natalie and Lillian ask if she wants any sweets, yet she politely declines, not wanting to trouble them and assuring them she can manage on her own. Blanche rejects the idea of stepping back, insisting that Roger entrusted them with protecting Melfiera and they intend to honor that as her knights. She offers her sword as a pledge of loyalty, and when Melfiera draws it, she notices the same insignia Roger carried the day he saved her. Returning the blade, Melfiera says Roger chose them for a reason, which is enough for her trust, but reminds them they know little about each other and that a sword is a knight's life, not something to hand to a stranger. She admits they must have heard the rumors about her, yet she promised Roger she would prove herself and has already decided how to serve this region. Until she earns the title of Duchess of Galbraith, she asks Blanche not to offer her blade again. Blanche accepts this and vows to become a knight worthy of serving her, earning Melfiera's gratitude. As Blanche sheathes her sword, Melfiera asks if it was forged by the same maker as Roger's. Blanche says all their blades come from a mid-lake smith and wonders why she asks. Melfiera explains she wants a sword of her own and hopes Blanche can introduce her to the smith. Blanche initially refuses Melfiera's request but gives in when Melfiera insists she at least mention the Smith family. Later, while offering to brush Melfiera's hair, Blanche discovers its overwhelming volume and apologizes, worried she can't manage it alone. Melfiera begs her to continue because Roger likes her hair fluffy, surprising Blanche enough to commit to fully untangling and perfuming it before dinner. As she gathers her tools, Melfiera feels guilty for distracting her, but Blanche reassures her she used to brush her daughter's hair often. Shocked to learn Blanche has a family, Melfiera listens as she explains she has 2 children, including a daughter who wants to be a knight like her. Despite her husband's concerns, proud yet aware of how harsh the knight's life is, Blanche can't understand why Melfiera insists on forging her own sword. Melfiera casually says she needs it for butchering monsters, leaving Blanche stunned enough to confirm she truly plans to kill and eat them. Melfiera openly admits it, noting that monster meat was what first brought her and Roger together. She calls Natalie for her tools, and Natalie returns with a worn set of knives thin from cutting flesh and bone. Lillian, horrified, asks if Melfiera regularly eats monsters, and though Natalie tries to silence her, Melfiera doesn't mind and explains how she began making monster meat edible. Lillian, amazed, says she has always wanted to try it but was warned it would invite disaster, and eagerly asks Melfiera to cook some. Melfiera offers leftover Xanas if Roger agrees, thrilling Lillian until Blanche scolds her for making demands and sends her home. As Lillian leaves, Melfiera stops her to ask her age, and Lillian explains she is 15, officially still a child but treated as grown since she has already been kneed. Hearing this, Melfiera asks if she truly wants to try monster food and happily offers to make it for her, inviting Blanche and Natalie as well. While they hesitate, Lillian excitedly requests the fruit of the Screaming Wood monster, praising its flavor despite the sickness it caused others. Intrigued by monster plants, Melfiera grows enthusiastic about tasting a fruit described as rich and sweet, and her excitement gradually pulls Blanche and Natalie in too. Mullen grows tense until Roger asks what's bothering him, and Mullen admits he's uneasy about the internal doors connecting their rooms. Roger assures him everything is fine, but Mullen remembers the duel and the strange bird leading the flock, wondering if the dragons had gone rabid. Roger realizes the largest bird had swallowed a vial packed with immense magic, its toxins driving it insane and causing the entire flock to rampage. While Roger sinks into thought, Mullen tries to soothe him and says they're lucky to be alive. He praises Melfiera's magic circle, believing her forbidden talent comes from kindness, because without it, they'd be dead. He adds that Roger will need loyal allies like Mula to protect her. Roger suddenly steps toward him oddly, startling Mullen, who asks why he's staring. Roger says he wants to talk about the terrifying spell, but Cass enters, and Roger mistakes him for an assassin, charges, and is immediately stopped and bonked on the head. Cass scolds him for using acceleration magic to rush Melfiera to Shield's room. Roger apologizes and says Melfiera just needs rest, admitting he panicked and brought chambermaids used to serving nobles. Cass teases him about loving her, and Roger openly says he does and wants to marry her. After the maids leave, Roger complains about Cass making his own mother act as a maid, but Cass insists she's the most trustworthy since she once cared for Roger as a child. Mullen, confused why his sister is involved when she's only a baker, hears Cass explain she took over the family bakery after her brother became a knight and that this job is temporary. Roger quietly admits Cass's decisions make sense despite his calculating nature. Cass then casts a barrier around them and demands the truth about the spell, accusing Roger of merging with the Ozone forest out of love and calling him things like walking volcano. Roger stays hurt and silent. Cass asks if anyone else noticed, unsure himself, then turns to Mullen, Mullen hesitates, not understanding fully, but Koss reveals the spell that wiped out the flock was actually created by Melfira. Stunned, Mullen listens as Roger explains she used the Xenas's magic they ate that morning and packed the vial with every spell she could think of before he activated it. Mullen is awestruck, as Roger says modern spells are simplified and ancient spirit-based magic is mostly lost, yet she still taught herself and drew that complex magic circle. Roger tells Koss to protect her research, and Koss says he already added extra seals to the vial with the royal model's magic. Relieved, Roger asks Mullen to keep everything secret for now. Mullen agrees and asks why him, and Roger says he wants him to protect Melfira with Blanche's company and return to being a dragon knight if needed. When Mullen asks if she'll be safe in Midley, Roger explains he prepared an isolated room he once used and turned it into her research lab so her work can continue and the monsters can be safely consumed. Galbraith is ready for change, and after the meeting Roger sits alone, realizing he also needs to speak with Melfira, whose kindness keeps her from seeing how her research might be misused. He's set on protecting her. Koss suddenly appears with his sword drawn, startling Roger, only to accuse him in a flat voice of eating without him. Roger panics because Koss never smiles, and Koss grows furious that the Xenas Melfira made was eaten without him, before a guard interrupts. Later, Roger meets Melfira and explains that the men they left behind reported some burgeoning creatures going berserk. He apologizes that this happens right after her arrival and says he meant to give her a tour, but now he must deal with the threat before the monster birds attack nearby towns. She asks if the situation is serious enough to require an immediate raid and assures him she understands her duty as Duchess to support him. Roger asks her to prepare food for his return, and Melfira thinks he's signaling to Blanche's group that he wants monster meat to secure their full support for her research. He then asks if there's any monster she wants so he can hunt one while he's out, and she, embarrassed, says it feels rude to ask for something big during a crisis, but since he offered, she'll tell him. Melfira asks Roger for a scrimwood fruit, surprising everyone. She explains she once ate it and regretted it because of its strong smell, while Mullen insisted it tasted sweeter than nectar. Mullen adds that the fruit was overripe and black but still fragrant and sweet, filling his mouth with joy until the taste became unbearable, no matter how much he rinsed. Melfira silently wonders how they had such opposite reactions to the same fruit and admits to Roger that it isn't a priority and that his safe return matters more. Roger promises to bring some if he finds it, then urges everyone to depart so they can return before sunset. He hugs Melfira, tells her he arranged for her research materials to be moved to his old room, and asks Blanche to guide her there. The next morning, Melfira is deeply worried about Roger after yesterday's violent attack from a rabid flock of flying monsters, frustrated that she can only wait instead of helping like before. Blanche calmly reassures her that Roger will return soon and encourages her to eat breakfast. Blanche reminds Melfira to greet His Highness with a bright smile, then shows her the room the Duke wanted her to see the day before, now designated as her research lab. Delighted, Melfira explores it and heads into the library, captivated by the books but still troubled that her beloved Prince Roger hasn't returned. She sits in a chair thinking of him before brushing her hair and having breakfast. 3 days pass, and while reading, she grows even more upset from missing him. Suddenly, someone shouts that the Duke has returned. Overjoyed, she runs to him, hugs him, and cries as he apologizes for the delay. He tells her he brought an exciting gift from the forest along with the scrimwood fruit, which he'll bring to her room after a nap. Exhausted, he immediately falls asleep on her and collapses to the floor, still holding her. Later, everyone gathers around the strange fruit he brought, covering their noses because of its terrible smell. Melfira takes out her magical vial and extracts its magical energy with great effort, succeeding in earning applause. Once the energy is removed, the fruit's scent becomes wonderful, its appearance transformed, and suddenly everyone wants to eat it. If you're enjoying the journey of this series, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps.